There's a video I saw. It was footage, body cam footage from a police officer, and this is from within the past year. I don't remember the town and I don't remember the specifics, but you can see that he's approached by a threat, and the gentleman kept approaching him and kept going and wouldn't stop. And it took 14 rounds before the gentleman stopped continuing to come toward the police officer. 14 rounds went into him. Well, if I have a 17-round magazine, when I have adrenaline running through me and I'm in a situation where I've never had to fight for my life before, can I guarantee that 14 of those are going to be on the threat? Now, it's also my job to stop shooting if the guy goes down with one. But I don't have a guarantee that he's going to go down with one round.
Right. You would have to have 75% accuracy when it's quite the opposite. You said at best the numbers are 75% inaccuracy. At best, they're hitting the target 25% of the time in the heat of the moment.
And that's law enforcement officers who train for these eventualities.
Right, right. You and I are not.
That's not in the middle of the night being woken up either.
Right, exactly.
Correct.
Exactly. All kinds of circumstance, going in your van or your car for something and someone coming up behind you or whatever the case may be. All different things where you're not mentally or otherwise prepared, where a police officer is very different. They're going out on the job, almost prepared for it, very different.
Yes, I mean, they still have to react, but yes, almost prepared for it. When I'm woken up at 3 a.m. and my brain is foggy, I can't say that I'm going in like a police officer who has his hand on his firearm and he's, ready to take action if needed.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked to a cop. I talked to an officer from Milford, actually, about a year ago. And we were talking about a police shooting, and people were outraged because the cop shot, I won't say 4 or 5 times. And everyone says, why didn't you just shoot once? And he was saying that when you're under pressure, when you're under stress, you actually fire more times than you realize. And by the time you realize that the threat has been stopped, you already fired 2 or 3 more shots. So not only do you have that aspect, which will drain your magazine capacity real fast, you also have the fact you have to hit the individual, and under stress, you have a less likely chance of hitting them, and you have to hit them in an anatomically correct or significant spot, because you can hit a person 4, 5, 6 times. If you haven't hit them in an area that incapacitates them, they will keep coming after you. So there's so many variables that have to meet. Yes.
And they have adrenaline coursing through them as well, so they're not feeling the effects of the rounds that are hitting them.
So you have so many things that are actually against you. You have to be focused. You have to have the proper training. You have to hit them with each shot. You have to hit them in an anatomically significant spot. There's just so much there that the average individual, you will end up running through a magazine before you know it. And the more you restrict capacity, is the less likely that person, has a defending himself, and you're always having to defend yourself. It's not like you seen the criminal, you engage them. They're most likely, they're catching you. They have to drop on you, so you're operating from the defensive.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Well, and when, if you're operating from the defensive, that means that you are being reactive. And if you are being reactive, your time is slower. In fact, they did a study of college students and trained law enforcement officers. And all they had to do was pull the firearm, get a shot off on target, right? So the college students could just pull it, get a shot off as quickly as they could. And I believe it was about 3/4 of a second that, their time on target. And the police officers were able to shoot. They were already poised, ready to shoot. As soon as the light went off, they could shoot. So the college students are pulling, say pulling a firearm from a hoodie, pulling out of concealment to fire, and they're able to do it in under a second. The trained law enforcement officers who are reacting to the threat, it takes them something like 1.2 seconds. It
Right.
takes them longer than a second.
Yep.
Because they're not being proactive, they're in that reactive situation. So that's what happens to us. If we're talking self-defense, it actually takes longer because your brain has to process, okay, there's a threat. Okay, what am I going to do with that threat? This is how I'm going to handle it. Is it a deadly threat? Is it a threat that requires deadly force, or can I escape through the back door of my house because I don't need to engage this threat?
Right. We took the kids to the Franklin Institute a couple years ago, and there was an exhibit, activity type thing that was testing your brain speed to react to something. So like as soon as you saw this or heard a sound, you hit the button and it would tell you how fast. And as soon as you start explaining it, I was like, oh no, they're not going to be faster in a second. We couldn't get faster in a second. It took a certain amount of time. And that actually answered a question I had in the back of my mind. I was going to bring it up earlier that, I've seen these one recently where a woman who had been stopped ended up in a shootout and shot a police officer and then took off. And I watched the police officer. I'm always asking myself, why didn't you shoot, bro? Like you took way too long. But that actually is a reasonable answer, other than something else, whatever it could be, is that no, he had to take time to react. He actually had to think about, I'm getting shot. What am I going to do? But I was like, man, you just sat there and let her shoot you, It's unfortunate, but that makes sense. It takes longer to react.